Hey, everybody, welcome to the Marketing Water Cooler podcast. My name is Jeremy Francesi. Thanks for stopping by. On this show, we provide actionable insights to founders and marketers alike who are looking to elevate their marketing game to meet the modern buyer where they are and establish themselves as the authority in the space. Today, we're joined by Sebastian Van Hannigan. Sebastian's president of Central Metric and really functional and revenue operations, which is perfect because this week we're talking a lot about the role of sales and marketing and that relationship internally as the buying journey changes, the role that these departments play in partnering with each other to develop a qualified pipeline evolves. And so we're going to talk a lot about the B2B sales journey, technology, that dynamic and everything in between. So Sebastian, welcome to the show, man. Thanks for hopping in. How are we doing? How's everything, man?
I'm good. Yeah. Thanks for having me. And like you said, this is stuff I deal with every day. So excited to kind of share my perspective on it.
Totally, man. Hey, we were talking a little bit offline, but one of the reasons I tagged you on LinkedIn and slid into your messages was, I see a lot of the content you put out, and I think the point of view you come with, I think you have a strong foundation where, you've been a salesperson. That's the first person on the team. You've been a part of a larger team where you're trying to see how things work together. Now you spent a lot of your time on the revenue operation side. Obviously, a really an expansive market right now as technology enablement, sales enablement, those resources and the tech stack continues to develop. It's understanding how all of those pieces come to play. And so, look, thank you guys for tuning in. We're going to break down a variety of different things, but for right now, let's just help people get up to speed on a little bit of your background and understand, like, how did you end up on the rev ops side? Just help us get up to like how you got to today. And I know Central Metric, you got it. You founded it 2 years ago, I think.
Yeah, about 2.5, 3 years ago, give or take.
Cool,
Who's
man.
counting?
Yeah, right. At this point, day by day, right?
Yeah.
Get us up to speed, man. How'd you get, how did things develop from NYU to the sales goal to hustling on that side to, now being plugged in at the executive level of helping people build an operational efficient, pipeline model, right? Where they're able to lean into things.
Yeah. I mean, I'll try to keep it brief. We're covering a lot of years here, a lot of struggles and a lot of successes too. So, coming out of school, I went the startup route. I didn't want to go work at a bank or, work in some stuffy corporate office. And I really got, I'd say, very, very lucky because I interned at a company called Namely. They had just raised Series A, a room full of 10 people, 5 of them salespeople. I helped the sales team prospect basically. So all day I was just sitting there researching companies and building a case for an SDR to reach out. Again, I got lucky because they needed SDRs. We were sitting at drinks one day. They look across the table at me, the manager and the director of sales, and they were like, we need SDRs. And I just slowly raised my hand. And I said, hey, I've been working here for a few months, put me on the phones. I had no idea what I was getting into. My anxiety skyrocketed over the next 2 or 3 years. And, I was an SDR at an under-resourced company that hadn't figured their product out yet, but really had great marketing. And so I was pretty much the guinea pig. This week I was calling Holland. The next week I was calling Africa. The week after that, I was in the Midwest. And, I got to trial all of the different, strategies and campaigns that we were going after. So I kind of, built my career there. And that's really where my perspective comes from. It's like, I've been an SDR. I've been the end user of a revenue operations process at very different levels. And so I understand that, it's not as simple as telling everybody to fill out their CRM and fill in their notes. You have to enable them. I always tell people, like, the SDR is your user of your software platform that you are building to bring in revenue. So the same way you have to make the outcomes easy to achieve for your clients, you have to do the same thing for your salespeople. And so that is really what followed me my whole career. Shortened version, I fell into the manager loop, tried to be an SDR manager, but wasn't allowed to be an SDR manager because I never was an SDR manager. So I kept betting on myself. I became a first salesperson. I became a player coach. Eventually, I found my way into consulting with Scaled. More on the process and strategy side, and also just learning how to be in a business that, you're selling your hours, your time, and your advice and your expertise. A few years or kind of into that, my co-founder, Kevin Lewis, and I decided that, strategy and process is important, but every project that we sit on, we're changing the CRM. We're changing the process documentation that leads to people inputting data into some combination of systems. And so again, we got very lucky because the industry decided that was important about the same time that we decided to build our career in that space. And it's been 2.5, 3 years since then. We got a team of consultants all over the place, clients all over the place. And I think we got right ahead of that curve in terms of revenue operations becoming, the buzzword that it is in our space.
Love it, man. I think it plays a huge part, right? There's a lot of people that build businesses and sell into spaces, but they may not have actually been on the other side of that conversation, right? Being the first,
Yeah.
Again, people have heard it on my side enough, but like my career has always been in sales, whether it's been cold calling, channel development, knocking doors traditionally, residential, or predominantly B2B. And it's one of those things that the way buyers buy has changed as information's become more readily available. That's changed the dynamic of that introductory call, of how they rely on the salespeople, the tech stack to create a more intelligent outbound process. But I think it plays a huge role in, you understand what's happening behind how the sausage is made, I guess, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think in the software and the development environment, I like the way you frame that of they're the user of the tools you're putting together. So it's not the utilization isn't the consequence of it, right? It's the goal of it. Right?
Yep.
So I'd love to understand, you have something very front and center in your LinkedIn bio that talks about revenue operations as an executive function. Right. And I think that's too important to kind of gloss over as we kind of anchor the conversation. Like, I'd love to understand what you mean by that. And potentially even if it's something where you find it common to be, people think otherwise, where they think maybe it's, instead of it's CFO, the controller, like it almost drops down from it to a director level. What's your position and your point of view on why RevOps needs to be an executive function?
Yeah, I mean, it starts with step one, right? The first RevOps person that people usually bring on is a Salesforce admin. Somebody that they, have all their certifications, they know what all these buttons do, they know how to fix reports and dashboards, but they don't know why they're putting these reports and dashboards together. They don't understand the business outcome that's trying to be achieved. They're just being told what to do. They're order takers, right? And as important as the tactical administrative level can be, we need to make sure that the decisions we make are being run through the filter of the technology that we use, because we might get halfway down a new campaign and realize, oh, Salesforce doesn't do that. We have to change everything now. And we could have thought about this months ago if we had a revenue operations executive in the room, on the other side of the glass, so to speak, telling you, hey, Salesforce won't do this thing that you need. So if we want to go after this market, or if we want to change our process, we're going to have to switch to, HubSpot, for example. We're going to have to bring in Zapier to connect these other two pieces of technology. And so that's really what it is. It's like the conversations are happening at the executive and the board level, and decisions are being made to, chase certain threads or go after certain parts of the market. And if you don't already validate that with the technology you have, then you run the risk of, going down a cul-de-sac and being stuck. And so many organizations are stuck in that cul-de-sac. And, typically that's when they come to us because they need help figuring out what they should have figured out months ago.
Yeah, I'm curious your take on this. One of the things we talk a lot about with clients is, define the strategy before you start buying things. Right?
Yes.
And we had a call around the renewal timeline of close of Q4, and we were talking with an organization, product company. They have a service business that then created a product company. They're going to market, and they found a lot of success. But now they're building out a tech stack. They're starting to make investments, and it was one of those functions. Like I think it's almost like buying a car. It's like, do you need a coupe that you can just rip through and enjoy the ride?
Yep.
Do you have 6 kids and you need some seats? Like, what are you trying to accomplish, right? I understand certain systems and softwares are industry standards. Oh, we need to build a sales team. Let's go, we need Gong for call recording or outreach for intelligence. And then we need Salesforce for a CRM. We need HubSpot for email. And it's like, you just put together $100,000 tech stack without a strategy.
Yeah, exactly.
And then at the bottom of it, now the quarter after quarter execution is justifying the investment in all those things. And now you're looking at the data that it spits out, but it's like, okay, so let's say you have Salesforce and then email automation, and then that runs through. It's like, now you're going to marketing, or depending on your engagement in the relationship, you're looking at, okay, well, how many emails are we collecting to utilize the tool effectively, open rates and click-throughs. And it's like, when did we decide email was our go-to-market? Right.
Yeah.
And
when we
so,
paid $1 million for HubSpot.
well, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, look, and there's that, and it's like, oh, we need HubSpot. Like, do you have even a starting email list? Right.
Yeah.
What's the utility? I'm curious, Sebastian, from your point of view, how do companies approach that process of the urgency around budget allocation to tools, but the uncertainty around, like, what's our strategy? Like, how do they approach the strategy and getting clear? So, like, do they immediately go buy tools and try to figure that out? Do they take time, and maybe you have some recommendations, like how they go? We have certain ways, but I'd love to learn from you. How do you build that process of strategy, tools, implementation, like how to stay lean? But, a follow-up question is, can Salesforces compete in a sales environment where maybe you aren't as tech enabled? Like, is that I'd love to understand your point of view on that.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say most of the time, the founder, who usually does not understand sales, they're a subject matter expert in the product that they built. They hire a VP level or consultant level salesperson that comes in and says, we're using this because this is what I've used before, and this is what I'm comfortable with. There is no discussion of requirements. There is no discussion of strategy. There's even rarely a discussion on budget. They just walk right in and they say, if you want to work with me, you have to use, whatever technology I'm comfortable with. And I don't think that's the right way to do it. And, I think it's led to a lot of problems in this space. I think what you really need to do, and it's very difficult to do this, the analogy I always hear is building the plane while you fly it. Like, yes, you do have to do that. And so you have to literally, and this is something we try to make every one of our clients go through, is you map out in painstaking detail what your ideal buyer journey is. And then at each phase or stage, status, whatever you want to call it, depending on the tool you're using, you're identifying how do you get into this stage as a buyer? How do you get out of this stage as a buyer? What internal stakeholders are in action? What external stakeholders are in action? If we're using Salesforce, what objects are being used? If we're using HubSpot, what properties are being used? Like all the way down to the important reports and dashboards that you need to report on that specific stage. Once you have that, it's not exactly turnkey, but you can give that to, let's say, an admin, and they can turn that into a working sales process. Or alternatively, you could hand that to 5 different CRM companies, and all 5 of them will tell you if they can facilitate this or not, and how they would. And so now you're getting into a situation where you have the control. You know how things should work, and you're asking the vendors to meet you where you're at. And then, you could talk pricing and, pay for the tool and onboard and get an admin to run it, et cetera, et cetera. But the point is, like, you have to know what should happen before you put in a bunch of technology to make it happen. And, it's similar to the car metaphor. If I walk into a car dealership with no idea of what kind of car I need, I'm going to get sold on some stuff that is not necessary for my day-to-day life. But if I walk in and say, I have 2 kids, a dog, we go camping once a month, I live in an area with a really rough road, there's frequent car thefts in my neighborhood, and I like loud music, boom, I now know exactly what kind of car I need. It makes the salesperson's job easier. I'm going to be happier at the end of the day. And I'm probably going to send some people their way in terms of referrals.
100%. Yeah, we did an episode early season 1 talking about, some things you need to account for before you engage a third party, right? Because exactly that. It's not about, the third party can't help you, but you have to have some, it's, it's like the, if you're dating, it's, go to your girlfriend, what do you want to eat? It's like, I don't know. What do you want? It's like somebody has to have an idea of either what
Give
you
me
do
something.
Give me something to work on, I think it's challenging though, especially with, to your point, I think you brought up, Sebastian, a really, really good point of, new leaders come in, right? CMOs turnover every 18 months, give or take. VP
Yep.
of sales, especially if you're a funded company, maybe 13, 12. I mean, for you, I'm sure
If
that's
you're
part of
lucky.
just, yeah, if you're lucky, I mean, and most of them, they're either one of two. They're either the one that builds the go-to-market and implements it, or they're the one that that knows how to scale the go-to-market, right?
Yep.
And so it's a really tough dynamic because there's different types. They're not all VP of sales are the same. Not all CMOs or VP of
Definitely.
marketing play the same, role. But I'm curious from your perspective, how, I guess the right question to ask is, and a lot of people probably wondering, technology is obviously critical, and it's obviously really important in the scope of like your engagement with clients and seeing how to enable at the end of the day, it's a enablement resource. How do we enable a
Yes.
better customer experience and a more productive sales force, right?
Yes.
If it doesn't do one of those two things, then we're just spending money because we think we need to.
Mm-hmm.
But, what is the role in technology when you look at, a sales team and how to prioritize? Like, do you have recommendations on where to start if they're going from absolutely nothing to something from a RevOps tech stack perspective? Like, do you have any recommendations on what that roadmap looks like?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of what the role of technology is. It's enabling buyer decisions and it's enabling, productive sales activities, sales, marketing, customer success. We'll call them revenue activities. You want to make the things that you want to happen as easy as possible. And it's the same thing in a sale, right? You want the decision that you want to happen to be very easy for your prospect. You want them to see the road to your logical conclusion while they're speaking to you, because then they're more likely to close. They're more likely to make that happen. And in terms of the right way to do it, I'll go back to my last answer, map that whole thing out, like step by step, put it in Excel, put it into a flow chart, however your learning style is, write it up on a chalkboard. Like, I don't care, but you need to have an idea of how a customer gets from point A to point B and who is helping them get along that path at each step. And so the critical point that I think a lot of people ignore is, going back to this is an executive function, is ignoring the middle managers and ignoring the reps. And so, a lot of times, even in the RevOps space, as cross-functional and smart and intelligent as we can all be, we'll build the most complex, ridiculous process. And then we turn around and hand it to an SDR and they're like, okay, so you want me to spend 32 of my 40 hours this week inputting data? When do I sell? And then the manager says, you want me to review 100 recorded calls a week? How does that make sense? You need input from every level in order to make this plan work. So, I know I said, map it out, but part of mapping it out is, after your V1, the directors have to look at it. After V2, the managers have to look at it. After V3, the reps have to look at it. Then you need to have another review of that entire process so that, for a fact that the time will be spent efficiently, that the people using it will be happy, and then it can go into production. You really are producing a software platform for your business.
I think you hit it head on. I'm increasingly more curious about. I'll give you this. So we were talking. This is a different client. We were going through some conversations, and when they had some internal documentation, I took a look at it, and one of the things I talked to them about was like, guys, this is helpful, but this is entirely designed from the sales point of view, not the customer point of view, right? So like,
Yep.
the awareness part of the funnel was so general that it was basically like take an email, automate, and then the next step was like take a demo, and it's like, whoa, like.
Yeah.
And so one of the things we're really spending time on, right, is like reframing the point of view to the buyer, right? Like,
Yeah.
like to your point, what step and who's enabling that step? Some of it's going to have human engagement. Some of it's going to have a technology or a software, enablement. Some of it's going to be an ad. Some of it's going to be organic. There's a lot of steps in the journey because let's be honest, the way people buy things, it's like, it's pretty chaotic.
It
Right?
is.
Like they get as far as they can without external intervention to then lobby it to the top of the priority list of, all right, we need to do something about this. Then they all start doing research and then more people are sitting at the table. Then they got to request budget. Once they have, it's such a chaotic process that I think sometimes, and again, I'm curious your point of view, Sebastian, is like, how do you almost reframe it with companies and when you're working? Do you find that common as well, where like it's like you look at the point of view and it's like there's just a lot of assumptions in the journey of the buyer, where like, it's I saw a Shark Tank pitch and they were like, it's very obvious what it is, and like, yeah, to you because you built it.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
customer has no idea what it is because they've never seen it. They don't care what it is, and your job is to make them care. But from that point of view, like, what do you find are common misconceptions or common points where maybe the clients stumble when building out that roadmap, where if they tweaked it a little bit, it can create a significantly better outcome? Is there anything you find common?
Yeah. I mean, people assume that not a lot of engagement will lead to a lot of interest. I went to a webinar. That doesn't mean I'm taking a demo. I downloaded a piece of content. I still don't know what you guys do. I went to your website 4 times in 2 days. Okay, there was a kid on my computer. He kept refreshing the page, and you will build entire campaigns and structures to bring people down a road that they don't even know they're on. So I think like a lack of information is something that's really common, like a lack of providing information on the problems that you solve, a lack of engagement. And when I say engagement from the sales team, I mean from like a purely quizzical, conversational standpoint. Why are you here? Is this piece of content enough for you? Is there a problem that you're actually trying to solve, or are you just like kicking tires? And I think a lot of it comes from the goals that we set ourselves up on. You need this many qualified leads a month. You need this much revenue and pipeline a month. And so you want to try and squeeze people into this funnel when they have no business being in that funnel. And then, to go back to an earlier point, why are we doing this? Because we spent $100,000 on 3 pieces of technology and we need to lower that customer acquisition cost. So these at-bats have to count. And so there's just a lack of really just empathy and, trying to see, where somebody is at from where they're at and not from where you're at and from what you need. And, we all say salespeople are problem solvers, but we're really just trying to solve our own problem of an empty pocket and being too low on the leaderboard.
Dude, 100%, man. I was catching up with a buddy of mine. We grabbed lunch. We're kind of, he's in B2B sales, and, it was exactly that point. I was like, look, everybody in sales in the B2B space, especially, says I'm an advisor to small business or to enterprise clients. Like, you're not advising shit. Right. Yeah. And I don't say that to be disrespectful. I say it because it's like, what are you providing that you need? Would they pay for the advice you're giving in that demo? Would they pay you for your contribution to the impact of their decision support, their ability to see things that maybe they otherwise wouldn't see, but because you're in that world 24/7, you're adding value to them? Like, I just think there's a level of almost like, I think there's a level of short-sightedness potentially where it's like, are you really, what value are you providing?
Right? Yeah. And that's a rule I tell every SDR that I coach. Like, your discovery call, it has to be worth it to talk to you if they never buy. And if it's not, then you need to go back to the drawing board. Your pitch sucks. It needs to be worth it to talk to you, even if I never engage with this company ever again. I need to take something out of this. I need some value as a buyer, as a prospect, or else, what am I doing? Why would I ever come back?
100%. Yeah. We talked a lot about that, and I'm sure, if depending on time, the gated, ungated content, I think there's a lot that can be talked about, but I think you bring up the most genuine point, which is, we need to spend more time looking out on behalf, being in sales in the world of today, where everything is publicly available, short of maybe pricing, if it's not on the website, and a specific feature review of a product, or maybe a success model of like how you really deliver your service offering. There's really, like, I think sales needs to really understand what is it that they need, they cannot get anywhere else but from you. And then understanding there's really only 2 to 3 things. Everything else they can probably find elsewhere, or what they are getting is maybe guiding their decision in the wrong direction because it's not good information, right? But it comes down to, in sales, your job's enablement. You're trying to distribute the proper information to enable a confident decision maker. Now, if you're ahead of the need, then you have the ability to think. I almost look at it like, like almost like Jerry Maguire, like you're their agent in the buying process, not your company. Your client pays you, so there's a little conflict of interest. But you're kind of looking out for them. Like, do you need this? Like, be almost the devil's advocate of like, well, this is why people buy from us. Tell me about you. Well, I don't know if this is a fit. Like when I started doing really well in sales was when I stopped trying to just move deals and when I started genuinely asking questions to figure out, I don't know if this is a fit. I was talking to a buddy of mine who's kind of up and coming in sales. I'm like, the second you can figure out confidently when to say no to somebody, you'll immediately have more value behind your yes. Right.
Yeah.
But it's challenging because they got to hit pipeline. They got to hit quarterly goals, monthly goals. They don't have the ability, especially if the leads suck. Right. The interest is low, but again, pulling it back to that main point, it's asking them about the qualitative insight around the quantitative data. You went to the website 4 times, right? Talk to me about your research process, right? How long have you been struggling with this problem before you made it a priority to start investigating solutions? Like it's understanding where they're at, right? With that in mind, I'd love to use we got about 10, 15 left. I'd love to talk a little bit more, Sebastian, about the relationship between sales and marketing. And for those that are tuning in, right, this week, that's been a topic of conversation and understanding, right? There's a lot of methods between Gerhardt and Walker and, Dar Social, demand gen. There's a lot of conversations out there, right? And I think the punchline comes down to, and what we believe is there's more people at the table making decisions, doing more independent research, spending less time with buyers. That's resulting in more enablement behind closed doors. So a big thing we talk about is whoever owns the material when the doors close, ultimately win the category, right? Because they're going to go check a demo with people. But at the end of the day, if the average decision maker is acquiring 6 pieces of information and there's 6 people at the table, well, there's 40 pieces of information. Right. 50, like there's 35 pieces, 36 pieces of information. Like if you're providing 34 of the 36 and you're actually helping enable them and being thoughtful, there's a very good chance if you don't have a shit product, you can win that deal. Right. But at this point, there's a lot of conversation, especially virtually when you're not down the hall from marketing anymore. You're not down the hall from your RevOps team or otherwise. Like in your point of view, what is the dynamic in that you see successful? And obviously there's 1,000 ways to win, right? There's unlimited, at the end of the day, it's culture and the ability to communicate, right? Set expectations and we'll go to work together. But, how has the relationship between marketing and sales evolved as the way buyers buy has changed?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the problems is it hasn't evolved enough. Like I talk to sales leaders every day that they want a certain number of leads from marketing, period. And there is no push and pull. There is no understanding on both sides. It's just, I need people that fit this persona and I need them to raise their hand. And if you don't do that, you fail. And so like people get stuck in that. Because that's just how it always has been in the past. That's what they're used to. And I think kind of the right way to do it is it's more collaborative. It's, marketing, interrogate that persona a little bit. Why is this persona important to you, sales? Do you have the data to back up that if we get 100 people that look like this to put their hand up, that enough of them will buy? Or am I wasting my time? And then always be open to updating that definition. The definition of an MQL, an SAL, an SQL, et cetera, be open to first documenting it so that you have to work from the same set of definitions. No productive argument can happen without that, but be open to changing that. Be open to hearing feedback from the SDR team on, maybe webinars not a good source for us. Maybe we need to focus more on paid ads. Maybe we need to have a few in-person events. And don't be afraid. A term I keep seeing a lot recently is the dark funnel. And so, you're talking about the behind closed doors. What is that stuff that's not quantifiable, that is maybe subject matter specific, but has nothing to do with your product, that, it left a good taste in someone's mouth. They had a problem and you already helped them solve that because of a white paper you produced 3 years ago. And there's no way you'll ever find out at scale exactly that this white paper is doing that, but keep pumping out that content and don't gate it. I'm anti-gated content. I think we have enough technology where we could track somebody, whether we gate the content or not. But keep just like, they say, rise above the noise. Sometimes you have to make the noise. Sometimes you have to show that you understand all aspects of the problem that you solve over and over and over again. So that way, when it's time to solve the problem, they just come straight to you. And the buyer has evolved enough that they will knock on your door and ask for your help if they realize you can provide that help.
100%. Yeah, no, I 100%. I think and I'm curious, you spend more time functionally in the sales ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
We plug in with organizations on the, we're a communications agency with the
Yep.
guts of like a market research firm, a production company, and a creative agency kind of wrapped in one, right? And like,
Okay.
and so, but from that standpoint, almost like how the the AEs kind of look at the SDRs and BDRs, like they work, you work for me to
Yeah.
set me meeting. Like I almost look like sales and marketing need to start to look at each other as on the same playing field, not like marketing works for sales,
Definitely.
and I think it's more of a respect factor and it's a cultural thing, right? I
Yeah.
don't think
And at
it's
the end of the
any
day, you both work for finance, right?
right. Thank you. Thank you. You both were exactly, no, 100%. And I think that's the challenge, right? Because we need 20 leads. It's no different than, we're there, we need this many followers. Like, well, do you want 1,000 followers that just generally float around? Or do you want 500 that are the exact, like, we need to stop thinking about like the number of and start thinking with the quality of, right?
Yes.
Is the content working, right? Like we work with a lot of private equity firms, right? And so, you're not going to write a freaking blog about how to, maximize your savings and then hope to generate $100 million institutional investment because it's not relevant. Like the game of
Yeah.
marketing, relevance, timing, and it gets back to enablement, right? Like you're not going to force a B2B buyer to buy something from you. They have to find value and make a decision to decide to buy from you, right?
And if you do force them, it's going to hurt you more than it's going to hurt them because they're going to be
Right.
the worst
The
client
worst.
ever. They're going to churn quickly. Your
Yep.
numbers are going to be messed up. Like, yeah.
It's just a headache. And so I really love the like go stress test those target your ICP, your demographic, whatever you're using to structure firmographics, demographics, that whatever your ideal prospect looks like, like, or persona, excuse me, like
Yeah.
drill into it, right? I look at it, we were talking about a client earlier today. It was like, the hand on the stove moment. That's the way I look at it. Like find the thing that really hurts, right? So if you have a
Yeah.
workflow automation product and you sell in a primary indicator, it's not the using of spreadsheets in Excel. It's that button, that
Yeah.
rainbow, like
That one function we could never figure out. Yeah.
that one function where that all of a sudden the whole thing freezes. Like that's the thing. It's not about using spreadsheets. It's they just spent 4 months building a financial model and now Excel froze and they have no idea what is accurate data or not, right? Like
Yeah.
it's getting relevant, but if you can't talk to sales and drill in, then you're just left with these random ages, dates, titles, and nothing else.
Yeah.
So I want to close out with a couple things. One being the role of efficiency in the modern sales process. I know it's something that you guys spend time on and thinking about how to create a great customer experience. How does how does efficiency and like the goal of creating efficiency in a revenue, a sales process, like how does that drive what you guys do for organizations? What's that role in the conversation when you're thinking about tech, when you're thinking about the buying journey and like how to create efficiencies? What is that? How does that impact how you guys go support clients?
Yeah, I mean, that's something we're always thinking about, right? I mean, if we map out this entire process, soup to nuts, front to back, why are we spending so much time on stage 3 of 12? Why are people getting stuck on stage 5 of 12? Where's the data on stage 7 of 12? And it's not just a time spent thing. It's also just an output thing, inputs to outputs. And so we're always trying to think of what is the part of the sales process where most of the work is being put in and least output is coming out. Because there's always a way to tweak or change or add technology, add process, add people in some cases to make that a little bit easier. And really that's the place that we want to live. And that's where the customer acquisition cost goes down and the monthly recurring revenue goes up and like everybody becomes happy. The average deal size goes up. It's right. Those areas of efficiency that eventually lead to the metrics that matter all going in the right direction.
Yeah, 100%. But it's hard to do any of that if the person that's doing all this is not high enough on the org chart to actually provide executive level visibility, functions of this is what we actually can do. It's hard to make decisions at the executive level on how tools can enable productivity when you don't understand the tools.
Yeah. Right. So just hire someone like me and get out of the way.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly, man. So, Sebastian, appreciate you hopping on and joining with us. I think, there's there's a shift coming. And I think it's internal in organizations of the relationship between sales and marketing. It's the shift in understanding the role of sales in a buying process where the buyer now has a significant, it's like buying cars, right?
Yeah.
It's like the make, the model, the style, that you can get a lot of information online.
Yeah.
Whether you gate it or not, it's another conversation. But if you outline the buyer's journey, you understand really what you need to enable productivity. There's a lot you can do with it. And look, man, appreciate you jumping in. Close the gap with us on like where people can find you, what kind of where. I think a lot of your content comes out on LinkedIn, but kind of close the gap on that for us.
Yeah, LinkedIn is the best place. I spend entirely too much time on LinkedIn. I post about the topics that we talked about. I try to keep a negative inbox where, there's not that many unread messages. So comment on my stuff, message me. I'm pretty reachable. And yeah, that's the best place to reach me, LinkedIn.
Good. Love it, man. Sebastian, thank you for joining. Everybody, thank you for tuning into the Marketing Water Cooler podcast. Stay tuned. We'll be back for more.